This week the Parshat is Parshat Behar Bechukotai. It's a double Parshat this week. We're not going to have time to go through everything. Let's talk a little bit at least about Behar. So Parshat Behar starts off by Yidaber Hashem and Moshe Behar Sinai Leimor. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai, saying, Daber el b'nei Yisrael, talk to the Jewish people, v'amarta aleim, and tell them, Ki tavau el haaretz asher ani noten lachem, when I'm going to come to the land, and I shall give you, v'shavta haaretz Shabbat la'Hashem. You shall have a Shabbat in the land, a Shabbat for God. 6 shanim tizah sadcha, v'shesh shanim tizmo kamecha. 6 years you should work your fields, and you should work your lands, and you should work your vineyards. Ubashana Shvi'it Shabbat Shabbaton yeh la'aretz Shabbat la'Hashem. And the 7th year, you don't work the land at all. And the Torah continues, it talks about it, that there's more to it. There's actually a 7 times 7. There's 6 years of work, 7th year of Shemitah, another 6 years of work. Then Shemitah goes 7 times till the year 49 is Shemitah, and the 50th year is Yovel, 2 years straight, which you're not going to work your field. Then the pasuk says, "V'natna haaretz pirya," the land will give you its fruit. Ve'achaltem l'sova, and you're going to eat. You're going to be satisfied. You're going to be full. V'yishavtem levetach land. You're going to live peaceful in the land. But then it asks the question: if you're going to say, "Manochal b'shana ashriit," what am I going to eat on the 7th year if I'm not actually working the land? I didn't plant. I didn't gather, I didn't do anything. So the answer is, you're going to have 3 years worth of produce in that 1 year's work. You have to understand. Couple of questions. Question number 1. What does Har Sinai have to do specifically with this law of Shemitah? So on that, Rashi says, very simply, that the same way Shemitah was given with all the little bits, with all the different laws of Shemitah on Behar Sinai, so to every single mitzvah in the Torah was given with all its tiny little laws and all its little bits. I still don't explain why Shemitah. So Rashi has to explain that you don't find it anywhere else in the Torah. Shemitah, he has an explanation. We're going to get back to it. Second question is, what's this question if somebody's going to ask and therefore I'm going to answer? What's this ask and answer? God says, usually writes in the Torah, you're going to have what to eat and that's it. What is this business if somebody's going to ask? Don't worry, you're going to have what to eat. Why is it written in such a way, in such a fashion? That's question number 2. Question number 3 is what is the point of the mitzvah of Shemitah? What's the reason behind it? So we're going to start with that. The Sefer HaChinuch brings down in Parshat Mishpatim, Mitzvah Pedalet, he brings down that the source of this mitzvah is to put into our hearts and in our minds, Chidush HaOlam. The point of Shemitah is to put in our hearts and our minds that there's a God who created the world. And how did he create the world? 6 days he worked, and on the 7th day, God did not do any work. The 7th day, he rested from all the work. That's why 6 days of the week we work, and Shabbat, we don't. But it's every single divisible of 7. It's not just in a week, it's also in years. Every 7th year, the same thing, we go ahead and we stop work on the 7th year. And then 7 times 7, 49, the 50th year, again we don't work. All this to show and to put in ourselves. It's not just to have it in our machshava, like we mentioned the other week. It's not just to have it in our minds, but in our hearts as well, to fully feel and live it. The fact that there's a Borei Olam, he created the world, he runs the world, and he created it in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. That is what the whole mitzvah and inyan of Shemitah is. He adds in 2 more points. He says point number 1 is it teaches you to be a vatran. Right? It teaches you how to be a vatran, how to be somebody who lets things pass and lets things go. The fact that you're not working your field that 7th year. And furthermore, it teaches you bitachon. reliance on God, right? There's emunah, there's bitachon. Emunah means I believe in God. Bitachon means I rely on God. So it teaches me bitachon. I'm not working in the seventh year. But if so, if it's truly bitachon that I'm relying on God, then why is it that I'm going to ask a question? We said the Torah says the person is going to ask the question, when am I going to eat the seventh year? And God answers, don't worry, you're going to have 3 years worth of produce. Why am I asking a question? Hayar Hashem tiktar is chas v'shalom, God's hand can't do. God can do anything. He created the world. That's the whole point. Seventh year, I'm showing God creates and runs everything. So what kind of question is it? So the Kerem HaTzvi brings down a Yalkut Shimoni in Parshat Devarim. When the Jewish people were passing by the land of Edom, the land of Esav, so we were told not to bother Edom, not to bother Esav, ki achichu is your brother. So the Yalkut Shimoni brings down that the reason why we were told not to bother Esav was as follows. Esav has a beautiful claim against the Jewish people. And the fact is they've been using this claim for many, many millennia. The claim against the Jewish people is there was a split. Yaakov and Esav made a deal. Yaakov gets this world. Yaakov gets Olam Haba, and Esav gets this world. Esav takes all the beauty, Tanugim of this world, and Yaakov is supposed to have Olam Haba. Let him sit in Torah, let him suffer through Egypt. If so, how do we have anything? How do we have food and drink? How do we have money? How do we have parnasah? The answer is through work. Jews, we need to have yigiyah. We have to work. It doesn't come easy. And therefore the non-Jews have a claim. The Jews have money. The Jews have money, right? Now, in essence, not all Jews are rich. A lot of Jews are not rich. But this claim the Jews have money is ingrained in Esav. Because they easy for you. But we have to work for it. What do you mean in the midbar? Where did we work? We had man came down from heaven every single day. Every single day man came down from heaven. Every day it fell from heaven. If so, if man was falling from heaven every single day, what work was there for the Jewish people? And the answer is the fact that we were going to a midbar. We were going to a desert. We were walking. It was harsh climate. Thank God we were surrounded by the clouds. But there was a certain yigiyah, there was a certain tircha involved. But therefore we're going to ask God, hold on a minute. Now that I come to Eretz Israel, and I'm going to sit there, I worked 6 years. 7th year, I'm not going to work. And God says, don't worry, you're going to have everything. What do you mean I'm going to have anything? If I'm not working, how am I supposed to have? Esav's supposed to get for nothing. Me, in order for me, a Jew, to get, I have to work. So God answers, don't worry, there's going to be enough tircha. What's going to be the tircha? I'm going to give you in the 6th year, it's going to grow the crop to last for 3 years. You're going to have 3 years worth of crop. It's going to grow triple the amount. So to bring triple the amount into the silo is enough tircha, is enough of a bother for that to be in the place of the tircha of working. But there's one slight issue with this. And we brought this down in the past, that what was Yaakov's answer to Esav? When Esav asked Yaakov, where do you have all the sheep and all the goats and all the stuff? Where do you have it all from? You said Olam Haba. The answer is all of this is used to serve God. That means God gives me things for free as well. Even though you could say Yaakov worked pretty hard for what he had. Right? He worked 14 years. Yeah, he worked for his 2 wives. Right? He worked pretty hard for what he had. Right? There's plenty of giyah, there's plenty of tircha. But the real answer that Yaakov answered was that this is all used to serve Hashem. It's all part of Olam Haba. But that really only works. We're going to explain in a minute. That only works for the person who's going to ask, who does not going to ask a question. We're going to explain in a second. The Lev Yahweh brings down from the Sephorna an answer as follows. He says, if you look in the Torah, it says 2 things. The first says, if you keep Shemitah, you're going to have everything you need. Then it says, if you're going to ask, then I'm going to give you 3 years worth of produce in the 6th year. What's the difference? Says the Sephorna, if you believe in God You have enough faith and bitachon in God that you don't ask any questions. Or where am I going to eat from? Then God does an amazing miracle. He gives you enough food in the 6th year for 1 year, and that little bit, each day, all you have to eat is a little bit, and it's a bracha within you, and you don't have to eat more. 1 year's worth of produce is going to last you for 3 years. Every day you can eat only a little. And that's all you're going to need. You're going to be satisfied. But if you're going to ask, which means you're on a slightly lower level of bitachon in God, reliance in God, then God's going to still do a great miracle. But it's going to include work. 6th year, you're going to have 3 years worth of produce. What's the difference? Why? So the answer that Levi Yoel brings down to this question is why? Is because you have to understand God treats us like a shadow. What I do, if I pick up my hand, God picks up his hand. Pick up a finger, God picks up a finger. Meaning, however I am to God, God is to me. The more I rely on him, the more I don't have to do, because it goes hand in hand. Now, how does this bitachon work? Because I know and realize that everything in this world is a miracle, right? A person has full bitachon in God understands that every single tiny little thing in your entire life is a miracle from God. The fact that the table stands is a miracle from God. The fact that the electricity, the light turns on when I flip the switch, is a miracle from God. You're going to tell me the electric current flows through and all that. Where does the current come from? Why is there current? Because God does it, so it's a miracle from God. Every single thing in this world is a miracle from God. That's why when you say modim, you say anisecha shebecho yom imanu, v'al neflotecha v'toratecha shebchalet, right? What does it mean anisecha? Every single second of my life is a miracle. So if you believe every second is a miracle, in that case, there's no reason why this piece of bread, I should only be full from 3 slices of bread. I could also be full from 1/4 of a slice of bread. Because it's all a miracle from God. So depending on how much you have that reliance in God and believe it in him that much, that's such a big miracle, there's nothing else in this world besides for God, then God acts in kind. So if you fully believe in God that he's going to give you what to eat without any questions, then you're going to have 1 year's worth of food, but it's going to last you for 3 years. And there's not going to be any tircha involved whatsoever. But the guy which is going to ask, he believes everything is a miracle. He believes in God, but he's worried. What's going to be? So God does a miracle for him also. An amazing miracle for him. And a miracle that everybody could see. He's going to have 3 years worth of produce. Everybody could see that miracle. But there's a tircha involved. There's a certain amount of work that's going to be involved because of his slightly lower level of reliance in God. And that's why it said, God says the whole world only had sustenance because of Chanina. Because God brings down the chef into this world because of the tzaddikim. And Chanina only had a kav of kruvim, a kav of cabbage a week. That's all he had. What do you mean that's all he had? He was poor. But that little bit of cabbage, they say, lasted him the entire week. He was full from a tiny little bit. Why? Because Chanina believed in Od Milvado. There's nobody other than God. And he believed it with such a conviction and such a feeling that nothing else can mix in. Nothing else. There's a story I brought down the Kasha Makata brings down a story. There was a fellow lived in New York. He had a business, and the business started failing. And the bank started coming after him. Where's the money? You owe us money. Where's the money? The bank started coming after him. Doesn't know what to do. His business is failing. The banks don't want to give him any more loans. They want him to pay off for the old loans. Decides to take a walk in Central Park. He's walking in Central Park. He's sitting there. He sits down on a bench, distraught. Doesn't know what to do. And a guy sits down next to him. Polished-looking fellow with a nice suit, with a nice tie. Looks perfect. Sits down next to him and starts talking to him. What's doing? I see you look down. Tell me what's wrong. Tells him, listen, you know what happened? I have this business and now it's failing. And the banks are all coming after me and I don't have money to pay for them and I need to take another loan. And nobody wants to give me. I don't know what to do. And he sits there crying and tells the guy his whole story. The guy says, you know what? It's your lucky day. The guy reaches into his pocket, pulls out a checkbook, writes out a check for $500,000 and hands it to him. Takes the check, he looks at it, and he sees the top, it says in big words, Rothschild. Right? The Rothschild family is a very wealthy family. And he says, God, it's a lot of money. The guy said, listen, it's worth it. Take it, but on one condition. Next year, the same day, you have to come and tell me what happened. He says, okay. Takes the check with him. He's a bounce in the step now. Walks into the bank. He says, look, I have a check, $500,000. And they see the name says Rothschild, and they start giving him advances. They start opening up lines of credit for him that didn't exist beforehand. Just for the fact that the check said the name Rothschild. That's it. That's all he had to show them. Was the check. And everything opened up for him. And his business turned around. And he became extremely successful. The next year, on that same day, he walks in Central Park. And he's waiting by the same bench. And he notices the old guy coming with somebody walking with him. And the guy walks with him and he goes over. And he says, thank you so much for the check, Mr. Rothschild. Thank you so much. He starts talking to him. And the guy standing next to him, I'm sorry, but my father is not a Rothschild. My father actually is not wealthy at all. He talked himself in his mind that he's a Rothschild, and he was walking around writing checks. He had printed checks with his name Rothschild on top, and he was writing checks that had no real value to them. And the guy went ahead and told the story how it all worked out for him afterwards anyway. What do you see when you have bitachon? When you're relying on something, everybody's relying, it says the name Rothschild on there, and that's all that everybody relied on, his business able to turn around everything, all because what he was relying on something. So to here, if you rely on God, there's nobody else besides God, then everything can work out for you because you're relying on somebody. You're not worried. You're not worried that you might wind up failing, you might wind up falling through. Like it's brought down by Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Right? He forced them all to go into the Beit Midrash to learn. No, it's kind he put a sword there and he said, anybody who leaves Yidaka b'cherev, I'm going to kill them. And everybody, all the women, children, people, they all knew all the halachot, they all knew all the Torah, they were sitting and learning Torah, and they left all the fields empty. And what did they have to eat? What happened? They had to eat because Sancherev came up against them. And God saved the Jews. And all the leftover from the entire camp of Sancherev, all the food, everything that the Jews needed was all in that camp. They didn't even have to work the fields. It was all there for them. It was all there for them. Because that's bitachon. That's what happens when you rely on God. You realize it's all from Him and it's only from Him. And because the truth is, the same outcome is going to happen either way. Right? What the outcome is going to be is going to happen either way. And that's what we find in Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Yisrael Belsky brings down in Israel the famous story in the Gemara. The Gemara brings down Rabbi Akiva and Papas ben Yehuda, right? They meet in jail. They're both in jail. They're both caught by the Romans, and they're both declared they're going to be executed. Now, a little while beforehand, the decree was, you're not allowed to learn Torah, Berabim. You're not allowed to learn Torah. And Rabbi Akiva was sitting there teaching Torah, Berabim. And Papas ben Yehuda told him, what are you doing, Akiva? It's a sakana. It's a sakana nefashot. What are you doing? And Akiva said, I have to. And now they both wind up in jail, and they're both sentenced to death. And Papas ben Yehuda turns to Rabbi Akiva and he says, look what a fool I was. You now are going to die at Kiddush Hashem because you were sitting there learning Torah. I am being taken to die for some other crime. Why? They're both supposed to be taken to die. The question is, the outcome is going to be the same. How do I get to that outcome? A person going to have the same amount no matter what. How are you going to get to that amount? By relying on God or by worrying every single second of your life? But the Parsha said, Shabbat LaHashem. It's a Shabbat for God. Shemitah. Says, he writes, why did it say Shabbat LaHashem? Says the reason is because what are you supposed to do on Shabbat? Sit and twiddle your thumbs and drink a beer? No. Shabbat is a day you have extra to be able to sit and learn Torah, to serve God, do mitzvot. Sudah Shabbat, it's all mitzvot. The entire day you can do mitzvot. So too this year of Shemitah, it's not a year just to sit back and take a vacation and fly down to Florida and stare at the ocean and do nothing for 6 weeks. And then another 6 weeks. And then another 6 weeks till you go out of your mind. That's not what Shemitah is for. Shabbat LaHashem. It only works if on Shemitah I'm sitting there and truly serving God. And no matter who you are, says the Netziv, no matter who you are, you serve God. You don't work that year, you believe in Him. who will give you everything you need that year without any problems. Because as Abel Pianzatel says, it's not the Shemitah, it's every single day of your life. Every single day of our life is a Shemitah. Every single day of our life we get everything from God. And that's why Chaim Shmulevitz Zatzal brings down two stories from the Gemara, two famous stories. First of all, you see the aniyut of what Jews went through in the past. The Gemara brings down a story to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was the ani gadol. He was so poor that he only had one outer garment that he shared with his wife. And they took days. Who could get out of the house, basically? Right? We all feel stuck in the house right now, right? He couldn't go out of the house because he didn't have a top garment. Him and his wife shared it, and they would take days. Who was allowed to go out of the house? So one day he didn't come to yeshiva, and he didn't come to the Beit Midrash. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel sent one of his students with a talit. Go, bring it to Rabbi Yehuda. Tell him to come and he'll wear it. Now Rabbi Yehuda didn't want to take charity. So when the guy came in and said, "Listen, here's a talit. Maybe you could come." He answered back, "No. I have money. Don't worry." He said, "You have money? Yeah, don't worry." And he picked up his mattress. And under his mattress was full of gold. So the student left. There was no gold under that mattress 5 seconds beforehand. Rabbi Yehuda had nothing. But because he believed in God so much that God could do anything, right now I'm being embarrassed. It's embarrassing for me and I don't want to take tzedakah. God can make gold appear right under my bed because there's no difference between me being able to see and God putting gold over there. And there's a similar story the Gemara brings down with Abu Chanina ben Dosa, right, which he mentioned earlier. Abu Chanina only had a kav chuvim me'erev Shabbat le'erev Shabbat, but his wife was ashamed from all the neighbors. So she would go ahead and she would bake. She wouldn't bake anything. She had nothing to bake, but she would put straw. She would put things in the oven so that from the top of the house, from the chimney, everybody saw smoke coming out. So people should think she's baking something. She's not so poor. One of her friends, the neighbor, knew she really had nothing. And to embarrass her, one day she comes and says, "Let's see, what is it that you have in your oven? You're cooking nothing." And she said, "What do you have, chalot?" And they went and they looked inside, and the entire oven was full of chalot. That the friend said, "Quick, we need to get the piece to take out the chalot." There was no chalot in that oven 5 seconds earlier. But if she had such bitachon in God, that God runs everything, and in order for me not to be embarrassed, that's what happens. That's the level of bitachon. And if you want a story from not so long ago, since these stories are from the Tezah of the Gemara, the Rav of one of the Rav of Yerushalayim was Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Yeah, the Kasha Maktab brings down also. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Now, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld had no money. Nothing. He was sitting on Torah all day. He didn't have a job. He didn't have any money. And one day, his neighbor says over the story, one day the wife of Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld comes to the house and asks to borrow a piece of bread. This is something that never happened before. Asks to borrow a piece of bread. So the neighbor, Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov, decided he's going to follow, see what's going on. She brings the bread into the house, and Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld sits down, he's waiting for his meal, and the wife brings over the piece of bread. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, he washed, he eats a little from the bread, he's about to eat more, and his wife starts crying. She says, "What am I going to do for the kids? We have nothing to eat. I even have to go ahead and borrow this piece of bread from the neighbor." Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld eats a gezayit of the bread, and then he does Birchat Hamazon. Gets up. His wife is crying. She says, "Listen, you need to work. You need to make money. We need something." Stands up, takes his jacket, puts it on, takes his hat, puts it on his head, and walks out of the house. He's going to work. Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael follows him, and he follows from a distance. Doesn't want Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld to realize that he's following him. Follows him a distance. Sees he's walking in the street. He's walking. He's walking a little more. All of a sudden he stops. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld stops, reaches down, picks up from the ground two Napoleon. Yeah, that was the money back then. Yeah, two gold coins he picked up, puts it in his pocket, turns around, walks over to Yaakov Yisrael. Yeah. He realized he was walking behind him. He knew the whole time. He says, "No, we could go home now. I made my money. We could go home now." He says, "I didn't realize. I always thought," he said, "my wife had the same level of bitachon as me. But now I see that she's not. I have to go out. What happened? God had put 2 coins on the floor. He picked it up and he was able to go home. That's bitachon in God. That's because he had such a belief in God. Ain't no mavad, there's nobody else besides God. God gave it to him when he needed it. That's because he believed a person has to ingrain it in themselves that everything is from God and it's from nowhere else. It's a famous story, famous story that we could tie in slightly. What does it mean, bitachon? You mentioned it's relying on God, and that means that God gives me everything and I don't have to worry about anything. What does that mean? We mentioned in the beginning of this week in the Pirkei Avot shir, who's the rich guy? The guy who's happy with what he has. So we brought down the Medrash Shmuel. Others, they say, this means that you use your money. God gives you money, you use it. You give, use for yourself what you need, and the rest you give for tzedakah, you give for learning, you can use for all different other things. That's what it means. Not that you leave it in the bank for your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. That's what we brought down from the Medrash Shmuel. And that's part of bitachon. Part of bitachon is what? That I'm not worrying about the future. I'm not worrying about next week. I'm not worried about next year. Right now is all I have. God gives me now I have. That's all I don't have to worry about anything else. So the famous story, there was a Reuben Krelstein, that's how it brings this down. Others also bring it down. There was a fellow who came to New York, and he was a peddler, he had a pushcart. And during the sales, he would sit there and he would read Tehillim. He would sit there reading Tehillim. A rabbi walks past him and says, kind sir, why are you learning right now when you're supposed to be working? Right now it's working. There's time for learning. There's time for working. Why are you reading Tehillim right now? So he says, Rabbi, 2 things. Number 1 is I work from morning till night. If I don't get my little Tehillim in now, I'm not learning the whole day. That's number 1. Number 2, let me explain to you about work. Yeah, he's telling a rabbi, let me explain to you about work. He said he used to live in Europe, in a small town, and he would work, and whenever he makes any money, he said he still does it at that day, whenever he makes any money, he gives a chumash to tzedakah. Not regular maaseh, which is a tenth. He gave a chumash. Right? He gave 20% of his money to tzedakah. Whatever he made. Little, big, small, lot. That day, he made the money, he separated it and gave it. He said he was a malamed, he was a rabbi who taught students in his town. And he would always give the chumash to that fellow. Always. Every single day. Big, small, whatever it was. One week, he makes a lot of money. 8 times the amount of usual. It's a lot of money that week. So he separates the chumash, the 5th. 20% was a lot. And he walks into this malamed and he gives him the money here. For this week, the malamed starts counting. He says, this is 8 times the amount. I don't need so much money. So he said, tell the malamed, don't worry about it. You'll have for the future. I don't know how much I'm going to make next week or the week after. Put it away. Take what you need for now. And the rest keep for yourself for the future. The malamed answered, no. I have bitachon in God. I have faith in God. I don't need so much money. I only need the amount you usually give me. I don't need the rest. Give the rest to somebody else who needs. Bitachon. Give the rest to somebody else who needs. So the guy said, I answered him, Tzlucha, take it. You do something with it. So he said, he answered back to me, there's 2 students I have, which are brilliant. And I'm not good enough for them. I want to send them to the big yeshiva, Slobodka Yeshiva, which was in Kovna, which is in Canis, in Lithuania. I want to send them to the big yeshiva, but the problem is they're so poor, they don't have clothes. I want to take them, I want you to give the money to those kids. We'll buy them 2 suits, weekday and Shabbat, 1 for each, and a train ticket for yeshiva. So he said, I answered him, go ahead, do whatever you want with the money. Give it to the 2 boys. The malamed went, he bought 2 suits for them, and he sent them to yeshiva. The guy's sitting there in the street now in New York, and he says, do you know who those 2 students were? He says, one of them, I don't know who it was. But the second one was Reb Aaron Kotler. Reb Aaron Kotler. Reb Aaron Kotler came to America afterwards. Right before, they had yeshivot in Europe. Then he came to America and he built Lakewood Yeshiva right now. With all the thousands of people, students there. Or Reb Aaron Kotler. That was his yeshiva that he put. This rabbi goes ahead and he says it over by a convention of rabbis. And another rabbi gets up and says, I could say this story is true because I was the other boy. Who is that other rabbi? Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal, who was Rosh Yeshiva in Torah V'dat in America, and afterwards in Muncie. Also, these two people who built up Torah in America were all because this guy right away gave to Tzedakah Chomesh right away. Didn't think, oh, I have so much money now, I'll put it in the bank, and right away he gave Tzedakah. Didn't just give Tzedakah of 10%, he gave 20%. And this Melamed, this teacher didn't say, yes, give me all the money, I'll hold on to it just in case for next week. No, I believe in God, that God will give me next week's money I need for next week. Let's give it to these boys. And because of that, they both have on their schut for all eternity. All the Torah that happened afterwards, all of it. See, because the Baron Kotler and Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zichronom Devracha, would have became who they were anyway, probably. But they wouldn't have had the schut to have it in their schut. But now that he went ahead and had bitachon in God to give these things over, now it's in their schut. That's how far bitachon could go for a person. That's how far relying on God and realizing it's all from Him could go. But a person has to truly believe it, truly feel it. It doesn't work to just say, oh, I believe in God. You have to feel it within you. Not to worry. Don't worry about next week. Don't worry about tomorrow. Right? The Chaim Narosh and the Sefer Kitzur Charedim and all these Svarim bring down this line. Don't worry about tomorrow. You have no clue what tomorrow is going to bring. You know what's going to be tomorrow? Nobody knows what's going to be tomorrow. We sit there worrying about tomorrow. Worrying. And the same way the other way. We sit there happy about tomorrow. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And it doesn't always happen. Both ways doesn't always happen. So the point is the person has to live in the moment right now. Whatever's going to be tomorrow is whatever God wants is going to happen tomorrow. Right now, I got to do what I need to do right now. Tomorrow, I'm not worried about. Good, bad. Whatever Hashem wants is going to be. Whatever Hashem wants is going to be. That's why the Mabit brings down. If he brings down the Shari Tefillah, it's very interesting. If anybody wants to go through it, it's an amazing, he has over there. In one of his Shi'arim, he brings down that when you're praying, you're not necessarily asking him for things. You're being Modeh, you're notifying him about things that you need. You're notifying him. That's what you're doing in Tefillah. You're notifying him what you need. Because you believe in him. He's going to do everything. He's a Kol Yachol. He could do everything. And that's why we could ask and ask, and we could pray and pray and pray and pray, keep on praying about something. I'm notifying him. There is another point that we're going to touch on for a few minutes left, we're going to touch on. On the Parsha regarding Shemitah, so they all bring down that from this pasuk, from Har Sinai having to do with Shemitah, they bring down that 6,000 years is the world, and on the year 7,000 is the Shemitah, basically. So first you have to understand that Rabbeinu Bachir, I think he brought this down once, Rabbeinu Bachir says that it's not only 6,000 years and 1,000 year of Shemitah, it goes the same as the Yovel. So you have 6,000 years and 1 year Shemitah, 6,000 years and 1,000 year Shemitah, 6,000 years and 1,000, until the year, till 50,000 years. That's what Rabbeinu Bachir brings down. The Magid Mesharim, the Malach, from the Mishnayot, the Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Bet Yosef, used to learn Mishnayot. And because of the Mishnayot that he would learn, it created a Malach, and the Malach used to come and learn with him. It's fascinating to read through. So the Magid Mesharim, we're not going to explain this. We're just going to say the superficial what he said. He says it doesn't mean that the year 7,000 Chas v'Shalom is going to be the world destroyed. Chas v'Shalom, he says. He says that really means is every year the Sfirot, right? You have all the Sfirot. If you say Sfirat Omer, right? You have Hod, Shabbat, Netzach Hod, you have Hod, you have Binah, you have Malchut, you have all these things, the Sfirot. So he says each year, each 1,000 years is connected a difference of one of the Sfirot. And the 7,000th year, which has to do with Malchut, which has to do with this world, there's a slight separation. So he says the year, it's still going to exist, it's just going to be in a slightly different way. It's just to put people's minds at ease, yeah? He said the world Chashom is never going to be destroyed. That's what he brings down. Just a side point, just to bring it down, because it's on the same psukim. I want to end off with a story. The story doesn't fully tie in with anything we said tonight, but it's a good story. It's a good story. Could say it for a different time, but I heard it this past week, and I feel to pass it on. The story I heard from Rab Malach Shlita. He said he brings it down from Rav Klein, Rav Shaul Klein. He was a big rabbi in New York, in Brooklyn. His name was, he was a Debretziner Rav. Debretziner Ruv, yeah. Debretziner Rav. He wrote a set of Svarim called the Be'el Moshe. He's buried somewhere in New Jersey. And his son-in-law is a fellow rabbi named Rav Shaul Klein. And this Rav Shaul Klein was in New Jersey one day and he decided, since he's there anyway, he's going to visit his father-in-law's grave. It's on a random day in the middle of a week. Shows up to the grave and he notices there's a couple standing there by the grave. And he's wondering, on a random day in the middle of a week, it's not a day of which he was passed away. It wasn't a special day. Why is people there? And the fellow realized that the Shaul Klein is wondering why he's there. And he says, listen, let me tell you a story. You're probably wondering why I'm here. I'll tell you a story. He said, 20 years ago, a little more than 20 years ago was from that story. I think it was like around then. Him and his wife got married. And it was a beautiful occasion. Beautiful occasion. They really liked each other. It was a perfect shidduch. Everything was amazing. Then they had their first child. And then the fight started. And they started fighting with each other. And arguing with each other. And fighting with each other. And arguing with each other. And the fights got bigger and louder. Soon all the neighbors in the building knew about the fights. Soon the whole block knew about the fights. And it reached a point in time in life which they realized they can no longer live together. They decided they're going to get divorced. So they had to go to the right rabbi. So they came down to the Debretziner Rav in Borough Park that he should make for them the get. So they show up to the rabbi. They want to get. The rabbi says, right now it doesn't work for me. Come next week, Monday. Okay. They come the next week, Monday. But he said, hold on. He said, there's a condition. Come next week, Monday with the kid. Right? Because he asked them, do you have any kids? They said, we have one child. He said, come back next week, Monday with the child. So they figured, no, this rabbi, there must be a reason why we have to bring a kid to it. Maybe the kid has to be there for some reason. They don't know any of the laws. Okay. They already prepared the Eidim, the witnesses. They have everything prepared. They show up and they write out the entire get. And now all it needs to do is be signed. Right before it's supposed to be signed, the Debretziner Rav says, is the kid here? They said, yeah, we brought him. He said, bring me the child. They brought the kid. He sits him down on his lap and he starts talking to the kid. Doesn't talk to anybody else, ignores everybody else, starts talking to the kid. He said, my child, he said, you should know, this is a get. I do them the whole time. For all of us, this is nothing. But for you, my kid, this is the end of your life. From now on, you're not going to have happiness. You're going to be running from one parent to the other parent, back and forth, and this you could be this grandparent, this you could be by that grandparent. Your entire life, you're going to be running from there to there to there to there to there. You're never going to have a stable place to be. And not just that. You're going to be in school. Everybody's going to look at you. Hazit. Nebuch. That kid comes from a home. Everybody's going to look at you. They're going to talk behind your back. And you're going to be embarrassed. And you're going to feel bad your entire life. When it comes to simchot, it's always going to be a problem. It's always going to be a fight. It's always going to be an issue. But my child, don't worry. It says God takes care of amonot and yisomim. Yitomim. He takes care of orphans. That's what you're going to be right now. You're going to be an orphan. And God will take care of you. That's what he tells the kid. Looks up. The father of the kid is crying. It hit the parents. The father turns to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, is there still a chance that we could think it over? The Debretziner said, of course there is. It's not signed yet. Here's the paper. You hold on to it. And If you decide to come back, come back. The man looks at Avshal Klein in the graveyard and he tells him, it's been over 20 years, he says. Tonight's my child's wedding. I came to say thank you to the Debutina Rav. You hear what it means? You hear what it means to go ahead and first of all, how you deal with people, but the effect you could have on another person. We spoke about this last week, but it's just a beautiful story. The effect you could have on another person. The relationship you could go ahead and you can instill in another human being. It's an amazing bit. It's an amazing piece. We're just going to end off that the Chavot al-Vavot brings down that one who has bitachon, one who relies on God and has full faith in God, is a person who has full menuchat hanefesh. He's a person who has no worries in his life. He has no tichot in his life. He has no issues in his life because he has somebody who's taking care of it all. He has a father. Yeah, he has a father who's taking care of him. He has a mother who's taking care of him. Who's his father and mother? God. God takes care of a person. And if God is taking care of you, you have no reason to have worry in your life. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should all have the full bitachon, the full faith in God. And nobody should have any worries in their life. And we should have a blissful, beautiful life. And be zochet to the geula shleima b'mehera b'yameinu. Amen.